Hi, here's a game, another game from the Gibraltar Chess Festival. And this game is between FIDE master Peter Lombaers, and with the white pieces, and with the black pieces is Grandmaster Ivan Cheparinov from Bulgaria, who is best known as being Topalov's second during his championship heyday in 2005 and after. Game started off c4, very flexible. e6 is a good way to meet it. g3 and d5, bishop g2, knight f6, knight f3, and d4. And the game takes on a Benoni type flavor. There's a lot of different things you can play here. You can play d takes c4, and positions can become similar to an open Catalan type position. And that's what's great about the English is the flexibility. So now you have this kind of reverse Benoni setup on the board. c5, and now you have white already digging at the center here. And this is exactly what you have is a Benoni in reverse. So you have this pawn, this pressure on the e5 square. Notice, however, that the black pawn is not on e4. Excuse me, e5 in this case. So here, white is controlling this square more or less. However, I think this benefits black because he doesn't have the pressure on the pawn to worry about, and it seems pretty easy for him to be able to take control of this square when he needs to at a later time. For instance, prepare bishop d6, d3, castle, and he can just take his time without worrying about this pawn dropping at any moment. Bishop g5, h6, asking the question, the Cheparinov. Bishop takes f6, just snatching the bishop. And again, if you're familiar with the Benoni, and I suggest if you're not, check out my video how to play videos. I'm up to part 4 right now, but how to play the modern Benoni. And if this position was reversed, black would be playing his bishop to g4 with the same goal of exchanging off this knight here. So Lombaers is just kind of playing the black side in reverse. So queen takes f6, knight bd2, and Cheparinov is missing some important things that you could have in the Benoni. One is from the white side, that is. I talked about this pawn not being here, and I think that's good for black in that, again, he doesn't have to worry about the pressure here, and he can build up on this square and be able to push kind of at will. So to me, that's not a big deal. For instance, he has his queen, bishop there, and knight there, and soon the rook, can be here if he needs to push. However, the downside is this bishop is still blocked back here, and often, again, in some of these lines, with the pieces reversed or the colors reversed, you have the bishop here, which would be on f4, challenging this pawn, and then you would also have a knight here on c4. Okay, in some variations. Okay, now that's just one variation of the Benoni. Of course, white can play differently, as you can see. Cheparinov has decided to play h6, which is analogous to the modern variation of the Benoni as white, with the colors reversed. Queen e7, knight b3, rook d8, and Lombaers just simply takes the pawn. Knight takes d4, and Cheparinov is relying on some tactics here. The knight takes d4, and bishop takes g3. Now, again, you have to be very careful when you accept trades like that, because really what has happened is white has traded his G pawn for black's central pawn. And I know I would rather have this pawn. So is black getting enough additional compensation to justify this trade here? So h takes g3. So that's the question. All right, is this trade, now we could say it's the h pawn traded for the d pawn, since h pawn took on g3. So is this trade enough to justify black's choice here? Now, it's great if he can pile up on this backward pawn and put white under great pressure here. But if he can't and this pawn advances, then it kind of refutes the idea. So let's see what happened. How is white going to deal with this situation right here with this pawn? So first he continues pressure here, making it somewhat difficult and uncomfortable for black to develop. So rook b8, taking the pressure off. Rook a d1, b6 from Cheparinov. So far so good. It looks like he's gonna play, move like bishop a7, trade off this strong bishop, maybe switch this rook over here at some point, and just pressure the daylights out of this pawn. Maybe even win it or create some type of tactical advantage somewhere else on the board. While white is busy defending this pawn, why not create havoc somewhere else? So Lombaers attacks the rook, queen d8, because it's very important that black maintains this to justify the trade for h pawn for d pawn. Bishop d5. Okay, so now there's some interference going on, and this rook is now up for grabs. And to me, this was a mistake, because he could have still maintained. Because what happens is once black loses this blockade, this pawn can advance, and then his whole concept that he when he traded the d for the h pawn goes out the window, because that was to maintain the blockade of this pawn. The only way he could have maintained that is by playing queen f6. The rook doesn't have to move. Right? The rook doesn't have to move, and this is still threatened. So to me, that is the true question of white's idea. Only thing I can see for white is he has to now move this bishop. So let's say bishop e4, then you can clamp on that square with e5. Then black's strategy is fully justified. Let's see what happens. So remember this, what I showed you here. So what happened is now the rook moves. Bishop moves out of the way now with Tempe against the rook. Now the rook finds itself somewhat misplaced, and now white is free. Okay, so that idea of, with the bishop taking here and all that stuff is basically refuted because of the this move rook g4. All is not lost. It's just that black is now slightly worse because white is dominating the center now. d5, e takes d5, and look what that has turned to. You lost the blockade, and now look what you have here. C takes d5, queen takes d6. That's a bad sign. It's having a blockade with the queen. Rook d8. Again, just probing the position here. Rook comes to 7th rank. a6. So now Cheparinov seems to be becoming a little panicky here. Perhaps queen a8 right here. Why not have this battery going and put four pieces against that pawn? a6. The rook's double. And here, Lombaers could have played queen b3, just hitting this again. And perhaps, then after b5, this move looks good. The idea with queen b3 is not just to attack this, but to protect this guy and prepare this move. And move this pawn one step closer. So now this is threatened by this and this. This forces this right here. And there you have it. Queen takes f7 check. So that move is very powerful, as you can see. And of course, after the king moves, then you just grab this guy. Perhaps he missed that missed that move. But the move queen b3 is very strong. Again, hitting that, protecting this, and preparing this with this attack on here. Okay. So that was missed. a6, and he just simply doubled up. So now this gives black a chance to play b5, which he does. And now queen b3, and queen b3 now doesn't have the same effect. And now Cheparinov plays queen a8. My question here is, bishop takes d5. Bishop takes d5. Not rook d5 because of this, but rook g takes d5. And queen f3 attacking this. Looks like f6 might be forced. And it looks like black is out of the wilderness here. I mean, it's still dangerous. I was looking at this move, rook takes g7, but I don't think it works. But it looks like here black is out of the wilderness. Perhaps rook e6 threatening this guy, and then rook g5. I'm not sure here. It looks like black has enough compensation even after this. I don't like this move too much from white, as he loses coordination in the position. Right, he gets the pawn, but then you have this threat down here, and white's pieces don't look connected to me. Yeah, this is starting to look dangerous here for black. Excuse me, for white if he's not careful. This is protected. This guy's stuck here guarding this. Yeah, I wish Cheparinov would have just taken this pawn first. Instead, he played queen c8. Then after rook 1e5, rook takes e5, rook takes e5. Okay, now this looks alright too. I mean, again, I wish he kept the pressure here. Perhaps just play rook d6. Hard to justify after queen d3. Excuse me, queen e3. You wind up going back. Maybe repeat the position for a draw, right? Queen b3, and you just go back again. Rook d6. Queen here, rook here. You play those games. Rook e8, a natural looking move. He wants to trade off some heavy pieces. It thwarts any kind of mating threats. You still have this going on, and then you got to remember with this little weakness here, this pawn is not ready to be pushed yet because you have this. However, after rook takes e8, it draws the queen away temporarily. Okay, so now this pawn can be pushed, and that, my friends, is the crux of the problem right there. So this move is also an inaccuracy. Rook to e8. See, before he couldn't do that, and now this pawn Let's push closer. This is definitely a sign of a bad position for black because black has to do a move that does absolutely nothing to build his position. And he actually does a move that weakens his position. He takes his bishop. His bishop is forced off a beautiful diagonal onto a defensive post, and it basically gives white a free move here. And he simply lines up against the f pawn. Queen c3 was also possible. Bishop f5. Queen f3 attacking the bishop. Bishop b3. a5. a3. a4. And this even looks good. I mean, even if the queens were off the board, just the fact that Cheparinov's pawns were on light squares, this helps with these same color bishop endings. If that were to occur, g6. Now the pawn is protected. Queen e8. Queen d4, centralizing the queen. There's all kind of tactics here. I mean, even if it's black's move and he was able to take that, bishop takes f7 wins the queen. Okay. Bishop c6 again, attacking these pawns now, and that's what I was saying about them being fixed. Bishop d7, queen d5, and Lombaers is playing a good game. Queen takes d7. Simple idea of just coming in with the queen. Queen e8. And you always got to look out for perpetuals and things like that. So again, centralization. This is a key thing that white keeps doing. Just keeps bringing the queen back to the center. It's dominating. It's hard for an opponent to do anything without control of the center. The queen has a large scope, protects the pawns, keeps the enemy queen out of the center, controls the diagonal, and prepares to push. What more can you ask of the move? Queen d7. Now he starts bringing the king. He's going to keep the queen centralized and just bring the king in. King cannot be mated. There's no danger. All he has to worry about is making sure there's no perpetual situations. But with this pawn here holding the queen up, the king is free to roam. So queen h3. He's not worried about one check. Queen d7. And the king just boldly comes in. King c3. g5. All desperation. Again, making a weakness in his desperation, and now he has to deal with that. King h7. Check. Queen e7. Again, desperately trying to hold on. Queen d7. Last breath. Queen c4. King d2. Again, just not enough checks. And after King e1, Cheparinov resigned. All I can say is shout out and props to FIDE Master Lombaers, who again is probably giving up about 300 rating points in this game, because I think he's about 2360 or something like that. Give or take a few points. And Cheparinov's 2700 plus. And great game, great positional game. It wasn't a tactical shot, but he just slowly, pushed his advantage. And what was interesting too was how Cheparinov made those critical mistakes, letting up the pressure against that pawn at critical points, which allowed white to advance that pawn. The two big mistakes in the game I want you to remember is playing rook to d8 at the end, allowing exchange of rooks when the queen was brought off the diagonal to e8, and that allowed d6 to be played. That freed up the pawn, and that was the last mistake. And the big mistake before that, the huge mistake in the game, was when the rook on d4 was attacked, and moving the rook away and allowing the pawn to go to d4. All right, the correct move there was queen f6. The black had to maintain that blockade no matter what. I hope you enjoyed that analysis. Please like, subscribe, donate, buy a book or video, anything to help support the growth of this channel. And I'll see you guys on the next video.